Brahma Gururvishnu Gururdevo Maheshwaraha Gurureva Param Brahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Chinmayam Vyapyat Sarvam Trailokyam Sacharacharam Atpadam Darshitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Tvameva Mata cha Pita Tvameva Tvameva Bandhuscha Sakha Tvameva Tvameva Vidya Dravitam Tvameva Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva. Ya Devi Sarva Bhuteshu Matra Rupena Sanstita Namastasyai 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 Namo Namaha Ya Devi Sarva Bhuteshu Shakti Rupena Sanstita Namastasyai 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 Namo Namaha Ya Devi Sarva Bhuteshu Buddhi Rupena Sanstita Namastasyai 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 Namo Namaha Ya Devi Sarva Bhuteshu Lakshmi Rupena Sanstita Namastasyai 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 Namo Namaha. Will you check our waiting room to see if Uday and Jory have showed up?
I don't think anyone's there.
We may have lost them.
Oh, there is waiting.
Pardon
Yeah,
me?
Jory was in there.
Yeah, I thought he might. Hari Om, Jory. Jory, can you hear us?
I can hear. Sorry, I'm late. Could get signal.
Great. Sorry if I mixed up. My bad. I logged on to the wrong site at first, and then we changed the website, so it's the same link. But anyway, you're here. We do not have Uday. So we are now at the very tail end of the book. Who would like to chant this evening?
I can chant.
All right. So Mark, which verse are we on? What page?
It's page 445, verse number 102.
Adarshanaгаram sarvam stya Adarshanaгаram sarvam astyadarsh swabhavatah evam Jagatchitatmaika Rupam Satyam Uditiram. The entire city, seen in a mirror, exists on account of its nature as a mirror, or identical with a mirror. Thus, the world, having a nature identical with the self that is consciousness, is declared as real.
Yes. So we have these two scriptural statements. Brahma Satyam Jagan Mithya. Brahman alone is real. The Jagat, the phenomenal world, is Mithya, illusion. But then Chandogya thunders Sarvam Kalvidam Brahma. Sarvam idam is a technical term, all this. It means the Jagat, the phenomenal world. The phenomenal world is verily Brahman. So which is it? Is it illusion or is it Brahman? Now, the easiest way to understand how to meld those two ideas is to go to the dream state. So if you close your eyes and visualize an elephant, then open your eyes. Was your elephant real? No, it was just an imagination. What was it made out of, though? Fabric of my mind. The material cause of the elephant of my imagination is the fabric of my own mind. Chaitanya, Chitta. Now, if I dream about an elephant, there's a similarity with the fancy that I had, the imagination, and there's a great difference. Both are just projections of the mind. The material cause of the elephant of my dream is just the fabric of my mind. But it's preceded by going to sleep, meaning I have the non-apprehension of myself as the waker of Arana Shakti, so that when the mind projects the imagined elephant, I think it's real. And what the scripture is saying is, this is no different. Phenomenal world is. But what it is consciousness. And again, there are enormous ramifications to this idea. Because you and I, to a limited degree, reenact the creative process of the infinite. So if you go to India and you go to an astrologer or a yogi, and they do what appears to be paranormal things, gems or mantras or yantras or other kinds of techniques. What we call this in the world of philosophy is a fetish. Fetish here doesn't mean some kink sexually. Fetish here means some object to which we imbue power, awe. So listen carefully. The gems, the mantras, the yantras work because you believe in them. So people go marching off to Lourdes in France. Blessed Virgin Mary appeared. There's a healing spring, a grotto, got piles of crutches in it where people have gone, dipped in the waters and been healed. Why? Because people believe. Sankalpa. Sankalpa. So, where do we start with our yoga? Understanding this. You may read the spiritual books and say, oh, this is all very comforting. I believe in all this. But if you spend your day, oh, it's a terrible world. Politics suck. Be afraid. The economy's terrible. Everybody's going to get sick from COVID. We're all going to die. Terrible, terrible, terrible. That becomes our sankalpa. But for the yogi, who's had this deep insight based in direct experience, it's all good. That's all good. Satchidananda Rupam. I am of the form of pure existence, pure consciousness, bliss absolute. I have that I am immutable. Then that becomes the sankalpa of that mind. And the Mahatma lives in a different world than the person in ignorance. Think. The Mahatma and the axe murderer. Both are Brahman. There's nothing but Brahman. What's the difference, though, between the Mahatma and the axe murderer? Their minds. Because of the difference of their minds, what they emanate into Prakriti, the great womb of spirit, and what shows up in the mirror of the mind, Pratibimba. Very different. Ramana Maharshi just be sitting around, and wild animals would come to him. Same with St. Francis. You and I, we may walk around being very frightened because we do not see Sarvam Kalvidam. Any thoughts on this? Any questions? All right, next verse.
पूर्णविज्ञानमेतत्स्यात् संकोच परिवर्जनात् ऋगेव दृश्यतां प्राप्तं समाहात्म प्रकर्षतः यथादर्शो नगरताम् एष शास्त्रार्थसङ्ग्रहः. This would be the complete knowledge, an account of giving up contraction of knowledge by positing the non-existence of something. Pure consciousness alone has attained to the nature of known objects by the power of its own greatness or freedom of will. As a mirror attains the nature of the city reflected in it. This is a summary of the meaning of the scriptures.
Yes. So the Shunyavadins, the followers of Sunga, scholiasts of the void, posit that there is no ultimate reality. There's nothing. Here he's indicating some schools of Buddhism. But ultimate reality is void, shunyata. It's empty of form, but full of being. We end all our classes with the chant Purnam Adaha Purnam Idam Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate comes from the Upanishads. What it means is exactly what Tripura Rahasya is talking about. Purnam Adaha. That, meaning Brahman, ultimate reality is full of bhava being. Purnam Idam. This phenomenal world is full of being. From the fullness of that, the fullness of this has issued forth. Udachyate. Purnasya Purnamadaya. When from the fullness of that, the fullness of this is taken away, meaning all the forms, they all pass away. That's their nature. They're temporary. And at the end of the age, I don't know if it's going to be a big crunch, something like that. Purnam eva avashishyate. Fullness alone still remains. Would you please mute your Zoom machine when you're not talking or asking a question? It's a little disturbing. Any thoughts on this? All right, next verse.
न बन्धोऽस्ति न मोक्षोऽस्ति साधकः साधनं च न अखण्डाद्वयचिच्छक्तिः त्रिपुरैर्भासिनी सैवा विद्या च बन्धो मोक्षश्च साधनम्. There is no bondage nor liberation, no means of liberation nor one who practices it. The undivided, non-dual consciousness power, Tripura, alone is shining. She alone is ignorance and knowledge, bondage and liberation, and their means.
So both bondage and liberation occurred in the mind, the self is ever free. What do we mean by this? Actually, myself is never bound, and I never lack the constant direct experience of the self. So I can go ask some person on the street who's suffering, do you exist? Yes, I exist. What's your existence like? My existence is miserable. Do you know that you're miserable? Yes, I know I'm miserable. They do not doubt that they are. They do not doubt that they shine. Now, the Ananda may not be available, but in the mind is all this confusion and delusion that's superimposed on that direct experience. So in fact, both bondage and liberation occur in the realm of Maya. They never touch the self. There's a wonderful text that comes from the non-dual Shaiva Tantra tradition called the Recognition Sutras by Kshemaraj. It's 1,000 years old. Probably very related to, maybe similar tradition as this text. And what it puts forward, a little bit different paradigm. It says that mind, Chaitanya, Shakti, the power of consciousness is fivefold. We usually think of just three: creation, sustaining, dissolution. But Kshemaraj adds two more: a veiling power and a revealing power. So a thought comes to you, it arises. That's Brahman. You sustain a thought or an activity or perception, Vishnu. It goes away, Rudra. But these other two powers, let me give you an example. Do you know what I had for lunch? Do you?
No.
No. That knowledge is veiled. I had potatoes with onion and cheese, garlic. Very good. Now you know. Veiling power, revealing. You're going to drive someplace, you don't know how to get there. Veiling power. Plug in the address on your Google Maps. Up comes the map, revealing. All of this is known by pure awareness. Now listen carefully. The ignorance of the self, which occurs technically in the Vijnana Maya Kosha, which gives me the feeling that I'm a person, veiling power. Then I go through purifying the head and the heart till I have a sattvic mind, a pure mind. And I introvert the attentive faculty and I investigate, go home. Well, for you Tamilians, this is the one thing I know in Tamil, Namyar. Who am I? Then in the subtle intellect, I have that pratya vijnanam, that aha, that recognition. Oh, there's nobody there. It's vast and empty like the sky. Always there, changeless, without a taint. Now, where does that knowledge go when you go to sleep? Ron? What do you know about the self in deep sleep? Nothing. Self is there, illuminating the pure ignorance of deep sleep. Man or woman of wisdom, they wake up in the morning, revealing power. Not only is the world revealed, but the knowledge that I am Brahman is revealed again. So here, from the standpoint of the Absolute, both the ignorance and the realization, while important and valuable at the level of our equipment, standpoint of the Absolute, they occur in Maya. So the purpose of this shloka is to get those students who are rooted in the knowledge of their self to let go of the subtle idea, I now know something significant. It's what's sometimes called second mind or enlightenment sickness, where the ego reforms, I'm special, I have an awakened mind, I'm different from other people. Another state of ego. Drop it. But we have to be careful with a verse like this, because when a beginner reads their way through, reads this verse, they may interpret it to mean, oh, moksha is an illusion. I think I'm just going to go smoke some dope and get laid. There is no bondage, there is no liberation. It's true. Any thoughts on this? What this verse is talking about is letting go of that last identification as the yogi, as the mumukshu, the seeker after liberation. You don't get to be there as an ego saying, I'm realized now. That's like thinking about what it's going to be like to be at your own funeral. Mark of the person of steady wisdom. They know they're not a person. Any kind. Any thoughts on this? This seems a little bit, what's he talking about? Just put it on the shelf. Next verse.
एतावदेव विज्ञेयं नान्यद्भार्गव विद्यते एतत्ते भीतं राम विज्ञानक्रममादितः एतत् सुविज्ञाय जनो भूय क्वापि न शोचति. Bhargava, so much alone is to be known. There is nothing other. Rama, this method of knowledge has been declared to you from the beginning. Knowing this well, a person does not grieve again anywhere.
Yes. So now he's echoing the first teaching that Krishna gives in Gita. First chapter of Gita, we set forward the yoga of Arjuna grief. And in the first few verses of the second chapter, he continues to whine. Arjuna does. Yeah, but finally he settles down and surrenders. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to resolve my doubts. I surrender to you. Then in the 11th verse, in the second chapter, first real teaching that Krishna gives. You grieve for whom you should not grieve, though you speak words of wisdom, which you've said is intellectually correct. The wise grieve neither for the living nor the dead. Why? Because the dead are not dead. The being that they are is never born and never dies. And these bodies of the embodied, ever changing forms, they never touch me. They are like the images in a mirror, pratibimba. Any thoughts on this? Next verse.
Naradesha Yanakhandaha Supapatyupalabdhikah Shruto nanashayet kasya moham ajnana sambhavam. Haritayana said, Narada, this knowledge portion of Tripura Rahasya has good reasoning and perceptibility. Whose delusion born of ignorance would it not destroy when heard?
So this is the biggest frame of our story. This is the whole story is being told to Narada. What he says is, read the whole text, contemplate it. Very powerful. it will free you. Now, there are many texts that will do this. And frequently, like I'll take a text like v102, and I will say to my students, this is powerful. If you do everything Shankara suggests, I can almost guarantee self-realization. But unfortunately, what people hear is, if I read everything Shankara wrote, they truck right along in their experience and a scripture match, but then it starts to happen. We find we're not yet able to do the practices that the scripture invites. What is it that we need to do? First, acquire some purity of mind. How? Abhyasa, vairagya, practice, a whole bunch of practices. And let go of my attachments. Attachments to people, places, things, and conditions. Attachments to any idea of self. This turns the volume level down. Ulcerated mind allows us to begin the practice of self-inquiry. Not the body, I'm not the prana, I'm not the feelings, I'm not the thoughts, not even the ego sense, the karta, the doer. The unattached witness of them all. What is this world? This world is like a very long and very vivid dream. Pretty, entertaining, but like a rainbow, seen. Next verse.
एतत् यस्य मोहो न शान्तिं प्राप्नुयात् क्वचित् सशैलपुरुषो लोके केन ज्ञानं पूर्ण भवेत्. Even having heard this, the first person whose delusion cannot attain to cessation in any case is a stone in the form of a man in the world. By
Yes.
what can knowledge arise again for him?
So having heard this scripture, if you haven't fully gotten it, let go of all your false identifications and superimpositions. He says, you're stupid. Luckily, Vedanta is the most compassionate of all religions. Christianity, for finite actions, you either go to heaven or to hell. Vedanta, everybody makes it. Heaven and hell are temporary. Just like rivers flowing to the ocean, everybody comes home. all the different places in the journey. Some people don't need to do any work at all. They just hear the truth and they get it. Others do very little. Work for 6 months, 2 years, 3 years. Others of us, our attachments, our aversions, our identifications are very tenacious. It may take a long time. It may take another lifetime. Again, back in Gita, Arjuna asks Krishna, what if I don't make it this time? What happens to a person who with sincerity strives hard for liberation and it isn't achieved in this lifetime? Krishna says, don't worry. You can't take your money. You can't take your friends. You can't take your possessions when you die. But you do take your yoga. The next life, you're born in a family where you get those spiritual sanskaras at an early age. It's all set up. Achieve moksha quickly. You think of somebody like Ramana Maharshi, whose total sadhana took half an hour when he was 16. I always think, well, he was a bit of a dullard in his prior life, probably. Not really close, but didn't quite rooted. And to come back, a little more tapas. You take the Buddha. If I remember the story right, wasn't he 40 when he attained enlightenment? Isn't that correct?
I think so, yeah.
After years of struggle. Years of struggle. Now, I will never know if there were no other Satgurus around who could have helped him out, or he was just stupid and stubborn, had a hard time taking suggestions. But in the end, he says, I'm going to sit down under this tree and I'm not moving till I know. And the beauty of the life of the Buddha is in the end, we do it ourselves. Shankara says success in spiritual endeavors is entirely due to the degree of the qualifications of a fit student, being adhikari. Other factors such as time and place, and I would even say the guru, while helpful and important, essentially secondary. Self-realization is not difficult. Again, in Gita, Krishna says, easy to perform. It's very rare. Primary reason is nobody wants it. Next reason is if you get exposed to this knowledge, you have misunderstanding and a lot of false ideas. You get caught up in all sorts of non-productive practices. Three, we have this big fear. if I give everything up, I'm not going to have any fun. We don't realize all that we're giving up is our suffering. And then at the beginning of the text, who remembers the first subject? What is the root cause of liberation? What does the scripture say? Sadhu Sangha. If you have the great punya to meet someone who's traveled the path already, then they're able to help us cut away all the bullshit. No, this is what you need to do. This is the trick to practice. Makes all the difference in the world. So if you've gone all the way through Tripura Rahasya and feel like you're not rooted in knowledge, don't worry. You're a little harsh here. Going on.
Sukrideva Shrutam Hetat Vijnanam Janaye Dridham Dvidha Tridha Vamandasya Jnanam na Janaye Katham. Heard merely once, this can indeed produce firm knowledge. Heard twice or thrice, how can it not produce knowledge even in a dull person?
So if it doesn't strike at your heart and remove all doubt, what's the implied suggestion here?
Read it again.
Yeah. Now, in old-timey days, we just heard it. Today, we have printing presses, YouTube, so we can hear with our eyes as well. So even the person who may be dull, study it again. And Santosh had wanted to take a look at Taittiriya Upanishad. There's a refrain at the very end of it. Swadhyaya pravachanecha, swadhyaya pravachanecha. Swadhyaya in the Vedantic context means your own self-study. Heard it from the teacher, explaining the verses. Now you go home, reread the verses, and come to your own understanding of it. And then pravachana. Talk about it with one another, literally teach one another. Discuss it. Next verse.
Etat papaudhashamanam Shrutam Vijnanadam Matam Likhitam Drishtidoshaghnam Pujitam Chitta Shodhanam Mudhata Nashanam Chaitat Sarvada Parishilitam. This work is considered as the giver of knowledge and the destroyer of a multitude of sins when heard. When written, it is the destroyer of the defects of vision, and worshipped, it is the purifier of the mind. This is also the remover of ignorance when studied always. Note, defects of vision refers to the tendency of the eyes to go after pleasing and sensual sights. Worship is reverence towards the scripture, leading to the practice of its precepts and consequent purification of the mind.
Yes. So again, it doesn't mean put the book on your altar and do puja. It means have reverence for the knowledge. Spend time with this text. I was first exposed to this text in the mid-70s, probably 75 or 76. Only in English at that point. I didn't even know if this particular version was in print. And I've been going over it ever since. Get more out of it each. Next verse.
सर्वात्मभूतं यद्रूपं विचार्यावगतं स्फुटं मुक्तिः स्यादन्यथा बन्धः सा भवेत् त्रिपुरैव ह्रीम्. That natural state, which is a self of all, if clearly known, having investigated it, there could be liberation. Otherwise, there would be bondage. That consciousness constituting the natural state alone would be Tripura, signified by the mystic syllable Hrim.
So Hrim is one of the seed mantras from the Vedas. But the whole point here, Tripura, literally the three cities. What is it that's beyond the waking dream and deep sleep states? The Turiya, the grounding being, the consciousness. You are that. This world is that. That's the highest. I think that's the last verse, is it not?
Yeah, and there's one more with no English.
Okay.
Tripuraya prasadena swatmashuddhyaika siddhaye anudito grantha esha priyatam swatmadevata.
But no translation?
Yeah,
Can you figure it out?
I think so. So this is the prasad of Tripura. This is
The gift.
the gift of Tripura, which will purify your Atman. Swatma Shuddhyaika Siddhaye. Anudito Grantesha. This is unsurpassed text, which will lead to your Atma Devata will be pleased. So whoever is your inner deity of this will be pleased.
So, as we do when we finish any text, we go back and chant the first verse again.
Om Namah Karanananda Rupini Parachinmayi Virajate Jagat Chitra Chitra Darpana Rupini. Salutation to Om, that is of the nature of bliss, the primal cause, and is identical with transcendental undivided consciousness. It shines like a mirror, reflecting the wonderful picture of the universe.
Well, thank you all for a wonderful journey. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Sri Guru Bhyo Namaha. Hari Om. Well, we have some time, and I mentioned last week that I thought we'd finish early. So I'm available, or we're all available, for questions, if anybody has any. They don't have to be about the text, they can be about anything.
I have something to
just point out or ask,
Please.
is there ignorance in deep sleep?
Ignorance, a deep sleep is ignorance. The state of deep sleep is the state of pure vasana. It's also called the Anandamaya kosha. It's when the mind is folded up into pure ignorance. So everybody's experience in deep sleep is nothing. You can't even think, oh, there's nothing. Only when you wake up can you remember, oh, I didn't know anything. But yourself is still there to know it. So it is like seeing darkness. It is not like being blind. For example, if I turn off all the lights and we had blackout curtains, the room would be pitch black, but you would not be blind. If I were to light a match, you'd immediately see it. Likewise, in deep sleep, you are seeing pure ignorance. But if you wake up and have to pee, instantly you're aware. And I can prove that you are aware in deep sleep. We do it, what the scriptures do it with, is the law of memory. The rememberer and the experiencer must be the same entity. So did I sleep well last night? Did I?
Yes.
You don't know. You weren't there. Did you sleep well last night? You know it. I don't. A little more worldly. Do you know what I had for dinner last night? Of course not. You weren't there. I made the potato dish last night. It was leftovers today. So the rememberer and the experiencer must be the same entity. You can remember in the morning that you slept well. Therefore, you had to be there experiencing. It's like closing your eyes. You're not blind. You are seeing the back of your eyelids. Here's the self. Here's the mind in the waking state. In the dream state, folded up into deep sleep. Nirvikalpa Samadhi. Oh my gosh, there's nobody there. You are a constant factor. Now, nobody ever got enlightened in the deep sleep state. So I wouldn't spend too much time thinking about it. Was that useful?
Yeah.
It's a very good question and dealt with in the scriptures. Nothing I told you is, everything I told you was what the scriptures say. Any other questions? All right, I hope I see you all next week when we start this wonderful text, Avadhuta Gita. For those of you who are local, we'll have the texts here. I think we have 10 of them, don't we, Ganesh?
Yeah.
So we have plenty of them.
Who's
So
publisher for that?
Ramakrishna.
but there's two different editions. We want the Ashokananda book. We have them here if you want it. Do you want it?
I may have a copy. I just wanted to make sure if it's the same.
It's in on Amazon on paperback now.
Ashokananda. is-
Ashokananda.
Just check if you that's one.
No questions out in Zoom land?
No,
They're enlightened. It says in Tripura Rahasya.
They finished Tripura Rahasyam. All right, we'll end here then. Om Tat Sat. Thank you all.